Yo, what is good and what's poppin' with everyone out there in podcast land? We're hanging out on the old virtual co-op couch once again for some good times, video games, and anything else that we decide to talk about. So crack open that can of Bang Energy, pop open them Cool Ranch Doritos, which is the best flavor.
I'll take it.
And come hang out with us. We are your Split Screen Cynics. This is episode 28. And we're here to do what we do best. And what we do best is not very nice. Wait, hold on a sec. Nope. That's not us. That's Wolverine. That's what he says, not us. What we do is actually podcasts and video games, and that's actually kind of nice also. So maybe that does apply to us. Anyway, we are your Split Screen Cynics. You can find us on most major podcasting outlets of your choice. Google Play, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Get at us all over the place. Wherever you want to hear us, we're there most likely. So go there, drop us a like.
Can I jump in with a new place that we're at?
Yeah. That's right. We've got some exclusiveness.
So we actually, Split Screen Cynics is now affiliated with youthegamers.com, which is the letter U, TheGamers. Ooh, I'm surprised I was able to do that. Basically, it's a new site. It's kind of like a content hub for esports and video games content creators and stuff like that. So we're actually being hosted over there. You can see our content, see some other content. It's a brand new site, just getting started. But yeah, we're now a part of that team, sort of. So go check them out. There's a little link in the profile on Twitch. I should put something on the site eventually too. But back to you, Berto. Sorry.
No. It's a good drop in there because in addition to all the major podcasting outlets, like my co-host Garrett said, you can also check us out at You the Gamers. Wherever you listen to us, we appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by. Come, join us on the couch, talk video games with us, argue with us, disagree with our takes, whatever you want to do. This is a fun place to talk about video games. Like I mentioned before, we are your Split Screen Cynics. My name is Berto. I am quite possibly the least cynical of the trio. And introducing the rest of my co-host in order of increasing cynicality to my, hold on, I have to take a look because we had to rearrange the windows. To my right is mid cynic, maybe? Garrett?
Sure.
Would you say
Wouldn't
you're
that
the
technically be your left? It's your left.
My left, but to the viewer's right.
Okay, got it. If you're on Twitch, that is. Yeah, I would say I'm very cynical up front, and then I backpedal. I'm like, well, but what this? So yeah, right in the middle is pretty good, I think.
And to the viewer's left, my right would be our most cynical of the trio, Tim. Tim, how are you, buddy?
Considering that I'm staring into the void consistently, and the fact that my life is just progressively getting more and more depressing, I think I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, nice.
Oh, okay. Dope. No, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, moving on. How are you gentlemen doing? It's been a while.
So far, so good. Yeah, it feels like it's been a while, but essentially it's been 2 weeks podcast wise.
I mean, yeah, we're talking about that. It's actually just been 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's every year.
Yeah, it's not like BC or AE or
7 podcast years for every 1 non-podcast year.
I think that's how it works.
Oh wait, that's dogs.
It's science. No,
close enough.
Maybe close enough. It's science. Who knows? I don't know how any of this works. I went to school for economics. I'm not a scientist.
Oh well, all right. At least you graduated.
Big man over here went to school.
Wow.
I mean, barely, guys, barely. All right.
Can I just point out Tim's wearing a Clock Tower shirt, and that's awesome.
I am.
What do you get all these cool video game shirts? You should plug that site at the end.
Or okay.
You don't have to.
Hey, listen, just because I went to school doesn't make me any. I put my pants on one leg at a time like everyone else, okay? And also,
one leg at a time?
I try to jump into them usually.
Me too.
Ooh.
Oh, Jesus. Have I been doing it wrong this entire time?
No, it's a struggle every time. I can't jump that high.
Oh, Jesus. That's why pantsless is the way to go.
I'm going to have to try that.
That's why I'm angling for that work from home thing.
That's why you only see me from here up on the webcam.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Let's move on.
I mean, I guess we on that note, let us move on because that is probably the only way we can respond to that. Like I said, we're your split screen cynics. Thank you for joining us. And if you stuck with us for this long, this is episode 28. Thank you. We appreciate you. And we're just going to jump right into it with our first segment, which is our What You Playing segment. So let me start off with Garrett. Garrett, what you playing?
A couple things. Definitely Void Bastards. This is a little reminder for all our listeners. Next episode in 2 weeks will be the Void Bastards Game Club episode. Mm-hmm. So if you want to participate in that, just play some Void Bastards or even just look at it and send us any questions, comments, etc. Jump into Twitch, talk to us. Who cares? But yeah, let's not talk about that too much. I assume you guys have also been playing that, so we'll talk about it 2 weeks from now. But the game I really jumped into that's new this week is the Dota Underlords. I believe it's an open beta right now. I have a news article about this, but it's one of these new auto chess games that have suddenly exploded in popularity. And it's kind of weird because I've played so much Dota. I think I have like almost 3,000 hours of Dota 2 on Steam.
Jeez, 3,000 hours?
Yeah, and that's not including Heroes of Newerth and the original Dota on Warcraft 3. So
I mean, you might as well be speaking in a foreign language to me with all those expansions, but 3,000 hours?
Essentially, to sum it up, I probably have, a mastery level of something is 10,000 hours. I'm probably hovering near there overall. I've been playing that game forever. I quit it maybe a year and a half ago or so. I didn't really quit it. I just stopped playing it.
I was about to say, it doesn't sound like you quit very.
Yeah. I mean, it's cyclical. You kind of get back into it. But this is probably the longest stretch that I haven't played Dota or a Dota type game in a while. So it was weird to jump back into what is essentially a mod of Dota. We could I'll explain this more in our news segment a little bit, but essentially the game plays in a weird, you kind of just draft heroes, and then you put those heroes out to automatically fight. And then, as you gain gold through victories or defeats, you eventually get more heroes, and then you can upgrade heroes to higher tiers. It's a really weird format. It's almost like a fantasy draft, but not exactly. But it kind of feels that way. You're just kind of picking guys and then they do the work. But you can position them and stuff. Weird game. I don't know. I think I played maybe 5 matches. They do last a long time, as long as you don't get knocked out early. So it's probably 4 or 5 hours that I've played it. But I kind of wanted to play it just because, everyone is playing it right now on Twitch and stuff. So I kind of wanted to see what it was about. But yeah, I like it so far, but it's just weird. It's a weird thing to play. I'll probably get more in depth about it once we bring up the news article. Other than that, more Days Gone. I've been streaming that a little bit. I'm weirdly having more fun with the game because I've just accepted that it's a wonky mess.
I was about to say, why are you still playing that game?
It's weird. It's become what bug will happen next or what goofy thing will happen next. And I've altered my playstyle to sort of embrace the way the game is not well made. So originally I was trying to do super stealth stuff and sneak up and not get spotted. And now I know I can try to do super stealth stuff, but always have a suppressed pistol ready to headshot people, basically, because they'll hear you and see you in the weirdest ways. So once you adapt to the game, you can kind of progress better in it. It's not the best made game, but I'm having fun with it just because of the goofiness. There was a repeat. I might be repeating myself, but there was a cutscene where my guy steps over something, he's clearly leaving, and then he just revs invisible handlebars on his bike and just drives away, just at the end of a cutscene, which is it makes for kind of fun streaming a little bit. So
I was in your stream when you were doing that, and you're like, what, did he just step? There's nothing there. What is he holding on to?
It took me a second. I'm like, what's he stepping on? And then I was like, oh, it's an invisible motorcycle. Unfortunately, that didn't
the best kind of motorcycle
with the game, because that'd be amazing if I was then invisible motorcycling everywhere. But yeah, that's me for games this week.
I mean, it sounds like you've embraced the Stockholm syndrome, where you're just like this game is terrible, but I just, you know what? It's become part of me now.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure as I keep playing it, I might get more and more bored with it. So who knows? I might end up dropping it or something. I've also, and this is a little shout out. It is currently ongoing. I think it started last night. I posted on Instagram. Summer Games Done Quick is currently going on Twitch.
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned it. I was going to mention it briefly, like if we didn't touch upon it in the Watch It Playing segment, once we got to the news, it was going to be like a quick hit of mine where I was going to bring that up. But
so it's not so much what you're playing, it's what you're watching, I guess. But definitely go check that out on Twitch. It's like some of the best speedrunners in the world playing like super crazy video games, some that you know, some that you don't. And it basically raises a whole bunch of money for charity every year. The summer one is Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah.
I think the regular one is Cancer Research, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, go check it out. Go donate. It's cool. Tim, what have you been playing?
Me, I have been playing this game called Ultimate Chicken Horse.
You mentioned this to me.
I love it.
It's a 4-player Steam game. It's a platformer, and each time you play it, basically there's a bunch of preset levels, and the goal is just to get from the beginning to the end. But the way they mix it up is each level, each player picks a little object, whether it be like a platform, a trap, a spike wall or something, and they can place it anywhere on the level. And you only get points if some people complete the level and some people don't. So
weird.
Essentially, you're trying to...
Oh, I know what game this is. I've seen it before. Yes.
Yeah, every time you play, it's different because you get randomized little obstacles and items. And you're trying to make the game as difficult as possible while still being able to complete it.
Yeah.
That's what you mean. So if no players complete it, nobody gets points.
Nobody gets points.
If all the players complete it, nobody gets points.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you have to make it hard enough, but
but not so hard that nobody gets points. So like ideal scenario is that it's so hard that only one person completes it and they get all the points.
Right. And there's always somebody who's playing who gets salty and just makes it uncompletable.
Yeah.
But there are ways around that. Like you can
Dude,
for other traps.
This sounds like a not Relay for Life. What's we did in November? Extra Life. Like so many. This sounds like an Extra Life game.
That is definitely a future party stream game.
Yeah, where it's like
really fun.
It's like if you want to be a dick and you just put a like hazard right at the beginning of the level where no one can get past it.
So I've been enjoying that. I'm also playing Void Bastards. Come back to that in a little bit. I started Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. I am really enjoying that game.
Mm-hmm.
It is just a modernized Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
It's not trying to be anything more than that so far from what I've played, and that's perfect for me. It definitely, there are parts of it where I'm like, this seems straight up lifted from Symphony of the Night.
Is there any mechanics that are different, or is it kind of...
Well, yeah, there's slight differences mechanics, but over the course of all the Metroidvanias, there's not really anything new per se, other than like little mechanics like the cooking thing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's even just some of like the levels and like the designs of the rooms, like it's so similar. But I have no problem with that. That's what I wanted. So that's been nice. And other than that, I played a little bit of this game called Darkwood. I mentioned it, I think, briefly in the last podcast, but it's similar to that game I was talking about called This War of Mine, but it's like a horror themed.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it's a top-down like survival scavenge sort of game where you're trapped in this forest, and every night shit like gets real bad, so you have to hole up in your cabin and wait out the night, and all sorts of creepy crawlies come out and try and kill you. And,
is it a co-op at all, or is it a...
No, it's a single player, but I've been playing it over Parsec. And I'll briefly mention I also started Little Nightmares as well over Parsec.
That's a fun game.
Oh my goodness, you've been cramming in games.
Yeah, I know. I've been squeezing them into my little break in between the regular season and the playoffs of Counter-Strike that I got that's now over. So I won't have as much time to play all these fun games. But that game is really fun. It's so close to Inside. It's hard to ignore the comparison, but that's a good thing. Inside was great. So that's it for me. What about you, Berto?
I have been, likewise everyone else, I've been getting my feet wet with Void Bastards, trying to get as much game time with that in before the game club it as I can, so we can speak intelligibly to it, enjoying it. But again, don't want to give too much away with that, because we want to really dive into that in the next episode and our impressions there. But suffice to say, I've been playing and enjoying Void Bastards. The other thing I've been playing this weekend, and this is just very, very brief because it's actually very quick. I got into the Monster Hunter World Iceborne beta this past weekend. So if you had PlayStation Plus, you could get into the beta this weekend and try out Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I think the beta opens up to everyone this coming weekend, and you don't need to have a copy of the game to play it, but it's just a sort of tiered entrance for, if you have PlayStation Plus, you get first dibs at it, versus if you don't have PlayStation Plus, then it's open to everyone. Super, super fun. Just a few different mechanics. I mainly played the Insect Glaive, surprise, surprise, as an Insect Glaive user.
Do you start with your stuff from your main game, or was it like grabbing your character?
No, it's completely, they give you a completely like canned set of armor sets and weapons to use. So it's nothing from your previous save carries over. It's like a completely blank slate. And they're like, here is sort of like, I guess just like a beta set of everything to use, where they're like, here's a number of high level weapons, 4 different armor sets, a couple of different palicos. So they just provide you with everything up front, which is part of the reason why it felt really short, because the weapons were already so like high level. And if you get like 3 or 4 people in a group to take down the monsters, it doesn't take very long. But it's really just for you to jump in and test out the new mechanics. And I'm sure with the other weapons, there are a bunch of different mechanics you can test out with those. But I didn't really dive into the other weapons. I focused mainly on the Insect Glaive because I wanted to see what was new with the Insect Glaive. So I can only speak to that. There's a mechanic that they have where if you feed a pod, one of the slinger pods, to your kinsect, now your kinsect can extract 2 extracts in one go, which is actually really useful because you can get both like an attack buff and a defense buff in one go and recall the kinsect. And it makes the health, sometimes when you send the kinsect out and he gets the health buff, it's like, oh, great. Doesn't really do much because it only refills your health bar a little bit. But now if you buff up your kinsect to the point where they can get 2 extract at once, it makes that health extract a lot more useful because you can get it both back and get like a 50% health increase back in one shot. So that makes that buff a little bit more useful.
Tim, didn't you play the glaive in
I did. I did play it, and I really enjoyed it. I played it with I don't know. I haven't played Monster Hunter World, so I don't know if they inherited the kind of like, I guess there were like 3 different weapon types per weapon. Like I played the aerial style.
Yeah, so they got rid of that, but they kind of added that in almost normally. Like a lot of move sets gained like an aerial jump in it, essentially.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the aerial style of the Kinsect when I played it, but the whole mechanic with it where you shoot the insect out and then you get different like power-ups based on the part that you hit with was a really cool mechanic. So
aside from that, on the specifically to the Insect Glaive, it gives you like a sort of downward thrust attack, which was really awesome, and I was using that. I was spamming the fuck out of that. Even though I missed like half the time, it looked really cool. And also you get like this really cool claw thing where you can attach, like you shoot out the claw and you can like hook on to the monster and just like start attacking it. So that was really cool too.
Oh, weird. Yeah.
So there's that whole mechanic, and that's across all weapon classes. So you get that claw weapon. And the one other thing that I know that they added in that I didn't actually try was that you could shoot the slinger when you have your weapon equipped, because I know that in Monster Hunter World, you used to have to unequip your weapon and like stow it before you could like load up your slinger and then like shoot a pot out.
Yeah,
So
that's
now
that's a nice little quality of life kind of thing. Because
it's a very small change, but like when you don't realize how huge it is until you actually need it. So
Yeah.
that was actually really cool too. So I am looking forward to that. I got my feet wet with it. I was playing and I'm like, ooh, I need to get back into some Monster Hunter World. I thought it was going to take me a while to get like my sea legs back under me, but using that Kinsect, using the insect glaive, I was like a fish in water after a minute or two.
Yeah, I have a feeling because we actually all played Dauntless. I forgot about that, but
oh yeah, we did play Dauntless.
I feel like I'm gonna be like Dauntless edition. If I try to go back to that, I'll be trying to do weird hammer reloads and shit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna start like using the insect glaive and then like start trying to like charge it up and doing like a charge shot and like what the fuck? Why is this not shooting a thing out? And then I'm gonna realize, oh wait, my insect glaive does not do that. So I played a little bit of that, and the other thing I played, and Tim already talked about it, so I'm not gonna talk too much more about it, but I did get into some Bloodstained. I bought the game and I knew I wanted to play it as soon as because this was on my radar since it was kickstarted.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, a while back it didn't look very good. So they went back, and I think Igarashi even came out and made like a very cheeky video. He's like, listen, we heard your feedback. The game didn't look very good. And then they did like a side-by-side of like the work they did to get it up to snuff. And they really put in the work to make it like the way it is now.
Now, that was just because I think I missed that whole like people being upset with the way it looked thing. That's just a visual thing, or was it?
I think it was just a visual thing. I don't think
Okay.
there was any ever, and if anyone's listening and they want to get at us and correct us, please do let us know. But I think it was just screenshots had come out of the development, and they were like, this game does not look very good based on these screenshots. I don't think there was ever any gameplay or any like videos revealed from it.
Okay, so it was just the art style, really.
Yeah, it was. I mean, if it was just screenshots, it was mainly the art style, but they were just not confident in it. And Igarashi was like, you know what? I hear you guys. And then he comes out and he makes like a video. You guys can like look it up, go on YouTube, go whatever. And he's got like, it's a very tongue-in-cheek video, and it's really kind of funny. And he's like, I hear you, basically. He's like, I got you. And then he's like, you didn't like this? It's done.
Yeah.
And
That was actually kind of cool. That
it's been completely redone to the style it is now, and it's a fantastic game. Like Tim was saying, it's like if you take Symphony of the Night and like put it into the 2019 setting, and that's exactly what it is. It's just so much fun to play. And I even went back and played Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which is like the 8-bit stretch goals that they had for that Kickstarter, and that just feels really good too, because it's like going back to the 8-bit Castlevania. It just feels so good to play.
I mean, I think one of the coolest parts about that is like you have a Kickstarter where essentially fans were like, whoa, like this looks like an issue. And for once they were like, oh, you know what? We hear you and we'll change it. Whereas Kickstarters normally are like, hey, fuck you guys. We're going to take the money. Like,
it's like, sorry, we're putting out the game.
Yeah. No, you guys donated it. It's a donation. We don't owe you anything. Bye. There was a recent thing. I forget what game it was for, but there was some game that was Kickstarter or it accepted donations. It was backed by Sony, which was weird. And then it became an Epic Store exclusive. And basically people who donated on Kickstarter who like wanted it on Steam, they were like, sorry, we can't refund you the money. Like that was it. And I forget what game it was. I got to look that up. But like, that's the kind of normal attitude that like Kickstarter does, which is like, who cares? You gave your money and like, you're not buying anything. Which is unfortunate because that kind of has led me personally to like not donate to anything on Kickstarter.
You know what I'm glad I didn't kickstart? The Ouya.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ouya. Whatever. I bought the Founders Edition of Google Stadia, so I'm basically kicking that start.
Yeah,
what?
but that's probably got more of a shelf life on it
maybe.
than Ouya does.
We'll see. Who knows? Should we move on? Should we do Cynical Spin?
Let us do the Cynical Spin.
Get some news in.
First item up on our Cynical Spin. So So earlier this year, the UK, they started doing an inquiry into this whole, not just loot box, but much wider than the loot box issue, sort of the, the nature of, I guess, sort of expanding on loot boxes, the addictive nature of that whole mechanic and the interactivity of this mechanic, and it's like basically it's like an online it's an online gambling thing, and they're like, this technology that you guys have is a big issue, so they started an inquiry into that whole technology, and one of the recent people that they brought into the House of Commons in the UK were representatives from both Epic and EA, and they were this article comes from gamesindustry.biz. I pulled this article written from Hayden Taylor. I want to make sure I credit the author here. The answers that the representatives for both Epic and EA gave seemed to me like they weren't very well prepared to deal with this kind of scrutiny, which left me a little bit confused after I read this article, because I'm thinking Epic and EA, both fairly big companies. If you think about like their war chests and funds that they have available to them, fairly lucrative companies. Don't they have a team that deals with like public relations? And they're like, hey, listen, you just got called in to the House of Commons. You're going in for an inquiry. Let's prep you for what they might ask you so that you don't seem like a total idiot when you're answering some of these questions. The Epic Games Director of Marketing, Matt Weisinger, and General Counsel Cannon Pence were also joined by Electronic Arts UK Country Manager Sean Campbell and Vice President of Legal and Government Affairs, Kerry Hopkins. So these are some of the big names that were called over, and just some of the idiotic things. And again, I think they're very idiotic. Maybe, and I mean, I was not there in this inquiry, so I don't know the context or the conversation that this was set in. But when they were questioned specifically about loot boxes, EA's Kerry Hopkins replied, and I quote, "We don't call them loot boxes. We call them surprise mechanics."
Surprise!
Are you kidding me? Surprise mechanics. Like, you guys were not, how could you be this?
What's wrong with that? I think that makes it 100% okay.
Like, how are they this badly prepared?
So here, I interpret this a little bit differently. Because yeah, it does. And some of your quotes here, like the fact that I saw in the article, I think you wrote it down too. Epic Games basically was like, oh, it's inaccurate to define Epic as a company which makes money from people playing its games.
When I was reading these things, I'm like, how are you guys this bad at dealing with, like, do you not have people saying, don't say shit like this?
But I think that, so here's the way I interpret things like this. Because you see it anytime there's any sort of like question answer format in any sort of legal setting. I think that they are prepared for it. I think the strategy is just to muddle the water and kind of be as vague and confusing as possible. For instance, like the loot boxes, surprise mechanics thing, like clearly loot boxes is becoming this sort of like negatively spun term, where when people think of loot boxes, they think of, addictive gambling and taking advantage of children and stuff. So like that's basically EA being like, listen, we don't have loot boxes, we have surprise mechanics. Like,
Surprise!
You see that stuff in politics all
Pay
the time.
us money.
And the Epic thing, like, Epic's like, well, we don't make money off people playing our games. Like, we make money off of like enhancing games, and like essentially they're just trying to muddy the waters, I think, to kind of skirt around the issue without actually having to answer anything. And I don't expect EA or Epic to be like, yeah, loot boxes, they're addictive. Like, obviously they're not going to do that. So I think it's intentionally goofy, in that, like, essentially they're skirting around the issue. And a lot of times at these things, you have people who don't even fucking know what video games are asking the questions. So like, and I remember there was something in there where someone asked about their son, playing Fortnite. Also, the article had this weird spin on it, where they were talking about how gaming addiction or gaming disorder is now, you know, a world disorder recognized thing. That doesn't actually mean it's like a disorder. It means that they're categorizing it so that all research can kind of be under the same umbrella when their research is researching that disorder. By defining a disorder, you're not actually saying like it's a thing, it's a problem. So the article kept being like, oh, especially with this going around, like I can't believe they're talking about it, so funny. But like that's I feel like the article was trying to put a spin on it, like they're evil overlords, which they are, I know. But like the fact that the people were asking like, well, how much time like do people on average play a video game? And basically both companies were like, well, we don't have access to that data, and if we did, it would be like a trade secret, a company secret kind of a thing. And they're like, how do you not have access to that data? It's like, well, no company puts out that data. Like Steam doesn't do it. World of Warcraft doesn't do it. I'm sure there are some indie games and stuff that do, but like that's almost like an industry standard in bigger games where you don't actually release data of like how long people are playing for, stuff like that. So like it was weird to me that the questioners were like being like, well, why don't you have it? Like again, at these things, I kind of think people ask the questions to make the people look bad. So the companies have to respond in a different way. Again, I'm not saying that like they aren't bad because I hate EA, but and I kind of don't like Epic either, to be honest. But I kind of think this was like a silly thing because it was just like it seemed like the article writer was spinning it a little bit to make them feel more evil. That was my take on it. I mean, I think they intentionally came across as like unprepared. Because that's just what you do in these situations. Like, why would EA be like, yeah, here's all our data. Like, here's how we know that people spend money on loot boxes because we did these psychological, like, like, they would never give that up unless they had to. So I think it's just a lot of, like, fluff nonsense going on here. Which, again, like, it's a real thing and loot boxes are being looked at. They've been banned in a couple countries. Yeah. The US is starting to look at it. So it's definitely a big deal for these big companies. But I don't think you're going to see them, you know, giving over their hard data on it or playing fair as far as answering questions. So
yeah, I agree for the most part. I feel like the media smells some blood in the water, and they're like, "Ooh, we can get on them for this." They're obviously going to send us some weird answers to our probing questions about loot boxes, which are such a hot topic issue. And then at the same time, you know, Epic obviously comes back and gives them their weird answers, and they're like, "Oh, look at this weird shit you're saying!" Like, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, we've made our stances pretty clear about loot boxes as a thing. I feel like, you know, there's not much more to be said about it. I think it's it hurts gaming as a whole, and it takes away from game design and all that stuff. But what do you expect them to respond when you ask them that question? They're gonna like. I don't see this as a PR disaster. I more see it as just like there's no real correct way to spin this, and they're obviously just taking a weird tack with it. But you know, there's no winning in this situation. Hopefully, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind some legislation that prevents it, but at the same rate, I can see the problems that can come up from stuff like that. So I just hope that game designers like actually just try to make games that people want to buy, as opposed to games that people want to buy little loot boxes in.
Yeah, it was interesting because they did actually answer some questions as far as like age restriction and stuff, and I think at least EA, I'm not 100%, so don't quote me on this, actually said they're looking into like putting that into their platform and not just relying on, you know, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft to do it on there. So there was some stuff in there that was legit, but a lot of it was just sort of like they're dodging the question, so they're gonna say some silly shit.
So do you think that by them dodging the questions and making it intentionally vague, that it better to sort of, I get what's the saying? Better to appear the idiot than open your mouth and like let everyone know you're actually an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. It's, if you think about it from a EA standpoint, right? EA has done the research, they've done the marketing, they know that this is the way to make money in the current industry. And they even said that with their sports games and their FIFA and all that shit. They do the trading card thing, which is, I believe, basically loot boxes, but you draft players. And they basically said, like, this is a lucrative thing, like, in one of their answers. But, like, it would be crazy for EA to be like, oh, yeah, we know it's lucrative here. Like, people play on average 8 hours a day and spend this much money, you know? Like, if they were to say that stuff, everyone would be like, oh, my God, EA's the worst company in the world. Like, so I think it's really just smoke and mirrors because they're going to answer only the questions they want to. Like, and again, like the one with the kids' ages and stuff, that makes them look good. They're like, oh, no, we're looking into developing that for our own platform to essentially like double check so that it's not just up to, again, Microsoft, Sony, whatever. So like the questions that make them look good, they're going to answer. The other ones, they're going to just kind of fluff past. The loot box thing, that's like politics 101. Like if there's a term that has a negative spin, you just rename it, which has been done a million times in VR. So, surprise mechanics, like, ooh.
Oh, guess what you got? You got a skin.
It'd be funny if they made loot boxes, like, you open them, but then it's like, okay, like, you're gonna get it in the next 6 hours, and then it just fucking pops up on screen, like, whoa!
It's a surprise! It, like, opens up, and it's a blank box, and then, like, 6 hours later, you get, like, the golden,
like a pop-up mid-game, like, just freaks you out, and it's like,
you're like, holy shit, it was the loot box! I don't know. I guess personally, I'm just of a different ilk where I think that they could have done a lot more, especially as two of the bigger companies in video gaming. They could have done a lot more in front of a major legislative body like the House of Parliament. The House of Commons, to let them know that, yeah, listen, we understand your fears and we understand your misgivings on these surprise mechanics, as we call them, but we're like really looking into this rather than, sort of playing dumb and avoiding the question, because that doesn't make them look good. It doesn't make the industry look good in the eyes of the people who are putting the regulations in place. Yeah,
I mean, there definitely could have been some better wording, I'm sure, but I do wonder if there was. It'd be interesting to read a full transcript. Because like the quote where it's like the guy responds to Epic and he's like, "You're not a charity." It's like, well, okay, like obviously not. Like that's not what he said exactly. But it was silly that he was like, "Oh, I wouldn't define our company as a company that makes money from people playing our games." And it's like, okay, like that's semantics.
And it's like, really, like, how would you make your money then?
Yeah, and it's like, oh, well, we provide a service to users, and it's just enhancing. Like there's just some spin on it. So I think it's tough because like when you're up there answering questions, you just kind of bullshit sometimes, So it should be interesting though. I am interested to see how this debate kind of moves forward because it seems like it's just like I think it's an easy way for politicians to get something done. So I think it's a hot topic in legislation because of that, because it seems like it crosses partisan lines real easy because it's like, video games.
No, that's true. Yeah. It's one of the things that regardless of where you stand on the political divide, whether you're Republican or Democrat here in the States, whether you're a Tory or a Whig, is that like 1800s?
I think it is, but Tory sounds okay to me. Sorry,
I'm like, I was like really digging deep there. I'm like, I just know Tories and Whigs were things, but I think that's like way back in the day. I don't know what they're called. I think
Tory's
now.
Still around.
But the point you were making, regardless of where you stand on that partisan divide here in the States, in the UK, in the EU, wherever, that's one of those things that it's really easy to agree upon across partisan lines and say, loot boxes are bad. We gotta regulate these things.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why you hear about it so much. And I'm not saying they're not bad, because I do think they prey on addictive natures of people and children. But I think the outright banning of something is always like it's like, oh, whoa, really? Like you can't just put in age restrictions or something, like we actually have a weirdly political, cynical sin because the news article I had has some political stuff behind it. Oh,
jeez. Yeah. This is your new segment called Politics with the Synics.
Politics and video games. How to get people to hate you.
Just say shitty things about games everyone loves.
Yeah.
I do that.
That's what we're here for. That's what
the Cynics do. We give our take on the news, and if you don't like it, well, that sucks for you. Get a podcast and fight us about it. Don't do that.
Oh my god! Could you imagine if we end up in a feud
listen
with
to
a
our
podcast?
listen to our podcast. Listen to it.
That'd be cool though, because you could like be like, all right, play us in Smash Bros. And Counter Strike, and
you got a problem? 3-on-3, 3 stock each. Smash Bros.
We just play Counter Strike, and like we're like, all right, you go, Tim. Like, we'll run out as distractions. You just clean up.
Next item on our cynical spin, and this news article was very interesting to me because it was a very candid conversation with EA's Andrew Wilson, and I think in the article itself it mentioned that he hadn't done sort of an interview like this in some time, so it was really interesting to get his take on a number of different things. This was an article I pulled from Mike Futter from GameDaily.biz. And it was right around the time of E3. EA's Andrew Wilson talked about how he's like, yeah, we're aware of how the industry views this essentially as far as loot boxes go. And they're like, yeah, we're talking to a bunch of legislators and we're working on that whole loot box thing. So, going from there to Anthem, which is where like I really focused the majority of my interest, because obviously Anthem was one of my more anticipated games when it was announced. I wanted to see what he had to say as far as Anthem's lackluster debut, if you want to be kind about how their debut was. So a lot of interesting beats in this article. I wanted to ask you guys what were some of the more interesting tidbits you took away from the article, reading this sort of candid interview with Andrew Wilson?
This was a pretty great article just because it was like nice, long. He seemed like a nice guy. And so this article I kind of thought was the opposite of the first article, where it kind of felt very fluffy to me. You got the CEO of a company on doing like a personal and quick interview. And like, yeah, everything he's saying is good. Like he says loot, he stands behind loot boxes. That's fine. He says Anthem, like they're fully behind fixing it. They want to let BioWare, like they're going to pour money into it, this and that. Like that sounds fine. He says AAA games, like indie games are important. Single player games are still important. Games as a service are still important. It's like, okay, so you're just like saying every type of video game is still important, basically. And then he talked about how at EA they've been struggling to like where they fall as far as like values in their company, and how he came in and then they rewrote those values, and now it's a much more like collaborative effort and stuff. And like it all sounds nice and good, but like to me it's just a CEO just saying what he's supposed to say. Hopefully it's true. It's nice that they're sticking around with Anthem, but like I kind of, were I in the interview, I was like, why'd you release it in the first place? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
if you knew the game was bad, like during the beta, everyone was telling you issues and you didn't fix them and you released it because you had an arbitrary release date. Like, then what is this information telling us? The AAA games thing and how indies still matter is like, okay, like that's just what everyone should say when asked that question if you work in the games industry. So this one kind of felt like a fluff piece to me. And not that he's necessarily a bad guy or anything like that. Like they were dropping things on how they gave up their bonuses.
Yeah, I did see that. It came out like
okay,
what, a couple of days ago.
Yeah, like okay, they gave up their like $2 million bonus for 1 year. Like, oh heavens to Betsy. I don't know. I wanted, when I first read the article, I wanted to be like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. And then I just took a step back and like, I just can't trust it because the guy didn't ask really hard questions.
Well, it's a case of he's saying literally all the right things.
Yeah.
Like from a PR perspective, there's nothing you can say about this from face value and be like, oh, this is the wrong thing. But it's like, it's kind of like, what's the point of this? It's like, yeah, everything looks good, but none of this matters if you're not going to follow up on it. Like, yeah, just saying, like, I mean, obviously the closest one I can relate to is the Anthem one. It's like everything we're hearing about Anthem is like they're doing basically nothing with it. I don't know you guys. I haven't played Anthem in a little bit, but I've heard nothing good about the changes that have been made. If not by now, when? Like if they're just gonna fully trust BioWare and that they're gonna get everything done, like that's good and all. Like it sounds good in an article, but it's like this game's been out for a while. Every angle that he took in the article sounded good on paper.
Like honestly, if it all is true and it comes true, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, if it is, then they're turning
that, and I think we can all agree to that.
They're going to turn EA into like the best company in the world, because it sounds like, I mean, it's no surprise that EA has a reputation for being like the most evil company in the world when it comes to video games. And I think just in general, I don't know how they're doing on the Better Business Bureau rating, but I think they're not too like high up on like
I actually
the list
wonder,
of companies to work for.
Personally, my experience with my recent EA service was like incredible for a video. Like I got
That's
responded
because they
to.
want to keep you. They want to. That's how they get you.
Oddly enough, for Apex Legends, it was which he talked about Apex Legends in there and how they had some missteps with that. But like I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing because like if you had a hardcore interviewer, he'd be like, "Oh, it seems like you kind of like just want to fix stuff after you put it out." Like that's what I would have been like. Why is everything being fixed after you released it?
Why wasn't it good when it came out?
Yeah. And that to me is the main thing. It's like it's all fine and dandy. It hit all the right notes. And I hope it's true, because I hope EA Games turns a new leaf and like does it the right way. But I don't know if it will, to be honest.
It's funny because I was following up on this on Twitter, and I forget. The editor-in-chief of this website, I think, put out a tweet saying something like they were defending this article because I guess people were saying that what you were mentioning, this really reads just like a giant fluff piece, because Andrew Wilson, like all the answers he was saying were like, these were the right things to say. And it was kind of like the questions were teed up for him to just basically knock him out of the park. They weren't like very hard-hitting questions. Which, if you look at it on one angle, they seem like they could have gone deeper into the questions, and rather than saying, so what are you guys going to do about Anthem in the future? Are you going to fix it? Rather than why was it broken to begin with? So I could see how people would make that argument, but at the same time, I appreciate that Andrew Wilson actually like took time and was like, yeah, you know what? Anthem was kind of fucked. We realized that it was kind of fucked when it came out. We're sorry about that. And you know what? We're not giving up on it. He mentioned things like video games that release now are in like 7 to 10 year cycles. So we're not going to give up on Anthem anytime soon. Again, just words. That remains to be seen. We don't know if they're still going to be pouring money into Anthem for any time, like any time in the future. If it's going to be the 7 to 10 year cycle that he's talking about, I guess that just remains to be seen.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's tough. Obviously you're not going to give up Anthem. You poured $1 billion into it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and people bought it. So you want people to keep buying it. So you had a plan for a 10-year game that's got microtransactions and shit. Like, it would be stupid to give up on it. And I hate that he was like, other people probably would have given up on it. It's like, other people aren't multi-billion-dollar companies. Like,
other people don't have the money that EA does.
I'm desperately trying to log into my Twitch so I can talk back to basically everyone from Growlers is in chat right now.
I was just about to say, I just saw I just got a flood of just want to say what up to everybody in chat right now.
Did you want me to introduce the next article?
Next article, Garrett, on to you.
Technically, it's 2 articles, both from Kotaku. I just thought it was an interesting thing as a guy on Twitch. Basically, the auto chess genre has kind of exploded overnight. The first article mentioned that Dota Underlords, which is the game I played this week that I tried for What You Playing, is already way past the popularity of Artifact, which is an in-house game made by Valve, and that the League of Legends version of auto chess has basically blown away Twitch videos. I think it hit number 1 earlier this week, like eclipsing Hearthstone and League of Legends and all those popular games. For those of you that don't know, auto chess is basically a mod of Dota 2,
which in and of itself is a mod.
Is a mod of Warcraft 3. And auto chess was actually started, I believe, in Warcraft 3, like the beginnings of it. That's how these things always go. But essentially, you draft heroes, you kind of put them on a little chessboard, and then they fight it out round to round against other people. Obviously, you can upgrade them, get items for them. There's different strategies and different kind of synergies you can make. I did play it this week. It's kind of fun. But basically, I think Epic is coming out with the actual auto chess with the guys who made the mod. League of Legends has, what was it called? It's like Team Fight Tactics or something is their version. And then Dota has Dota Underlords. I just thought it was interesting. It's sort of like the new genre, maybe. Kind of like how Battle Royale exploded. What do you guys think? Are you guys familiar? I don't think you guys have played any of these betas or the mod, have you?
You might as well be speaking like a foreign language to me.
Got it, no problem. But I wanted to put it in there just to like look out for this, because this apparently is the new rage genre at the moment. So
basically what you're saying is if I make a mod to auto chess, that's going to be the next big thing.
Possibly.
Because
make a mod to Dota
Warcraft
Underlords
was a big thing. A mod to that was the next big thing. A mod to Arma was the Battle Royale thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got a mod of a mod of a mod, and then I'm set.
What's funny is in the Dota article, they actually explain how, so Dota Artifact is the card game of Dota, which basically like Hearthstone was doing well, so Valve was like, let's make a card game. And the auto chess mod has far eclipsed total players concurrent by like 100 times Artifact. So weirdly enough, like games made by amateurs seem to do better than games made by big developers a lot.
All right, so here's my idea for a game, and now, like, stay with me, guys. So it's going to be a mod where you get a hero who then turns into a card, and you set the card down in a board, and then some dude with like Japanese style hair comes out and he plays that card, and he fights other people who play that card. But once they put the card down, the card comes back to life, and then they fight each other and they drain each other's hit points.
You have
and there's 100 of them, and the last person alive wins.
Ooh, do you have a title for this game?
Yeah, it's Yugi-No.
Yugi-No, got it. Just checking. What if he's a pharaoh? You forgot. Maybe we just make him a pharaoh.
He's not. He's not a pharaoh. He's he's a lord.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
So whatever. I'll move on. So the last article I put, we're getting back to politics, I guess. And this is this kind of blew up because there was a big Reddit thread about it. But League of Legends is actually currently blocked in Syria and Iran as part of the U.S. trade embargo that was enacted after Iran shot down one of our drones. And it was interesting because on Reddit, there was basically a thread where an Iranian player was asking people, like, how could we, like, how can I still play? And people were helping him out with, like, a VPN and figuring out how to get around the VPN's, like, lag and stuff. And a bunch of basically American Redditors helped an Iranian dude figure out how to play League of Legends.
Dude, don't let 45 read about that. He's going to like put that dude, he's going to put those Redditors in jail.
So it's an interesting, I thought this was just like kind of crazy when I read about it. Apparently it's not the first time something like this has happened. Apparently certain games are not allowed in North Korea. And it literally states basically due to U.S. law. No,
this
but it's
is
not
my surprise face.
It's the ban from the U.S. It's not North Korea being like no video games. So it's kind of an interesting thing because it's like a weird like collateral damage of like a trade embargo because it costs money and has microtransactions. It's like included in that. What do you guys think about this? I thought it was pretty interesting.
It's just League of Legends. Like, what is? It's not like other games that are centralized in the U.S.
So I know this specific one was League of Legends that was affected. I don't believe any other games have been affected by this trade embargo, which is again
the
kind of
U.S. get into a trade embargo with itself.
So that
just
nobody
stop
can play
League of Legends in general.
considering moving to Iran.
It's possible. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of interesting. It's funny because the article that I read was like, it's really telling because like it's just hurting civilians and all these, political warmongers, this and that, and it got all political with it when I was like, whoa, all right, pump the brakes.
Although I do like the fact where the Redditors are like, you want to play League of Legends? We got you. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. I thought that part was cool. It was like, don't worry. We gotta.
It's like we'll get around the VPN. Don't
use
worry.
Some proxies.
The American government's ban ain't got nothing on us.
I just think it's interesting because, like, what if we were playing a video game and like couldn't play it anymore because of a trade embargo? That would kind of stink.
Well, I'm trying to think what video games that I play that would get embargoed.
I don't know, like if Tencent's involved, maybe. I don't know. Like,
I mean, they what do they? Oh wait, they have a stake in Epic.
They have a stake in like everything.
Everything.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
They're like, oh, sorry, no Gears of War for you. I would kind of be upset, but not to the point where I'd be like, guys, I need to get on Reddit and figure out how to play Gears 5.
Like, what if
and I'm hurt.
I'm hurt by the warmongers. What if Japan didn't like us anymore in Final Fantasy VII? You just couldn't play that.
No, I mean, you know what? If Final Fantasy VII never came out, then my prediction would come true because I still don't believe that game's ever happening.
That's fair. You're not even banking on playing that at this point.
I mean, if by act of God or by act of Japan deciding they don't want to trade with the US anymore, I'm like, you know what? I told you that game's never coming out.
If Japanese games were fully banned in the US, there would be a gamers rise up moment, and it would be pretty funny. But I would be sad.
Especially now because we have a resurgence of like JRPGs recently.
Like, dude, what if like Elden Ring is like not allowed, and then I have to move to Japan to play Elden Ring?
Dude,
when it comes
oh my
out?
God, Guillermo del Toro would be so upset.
Guillermo del Toro, is he into that?
I'm sorry, not Guillermo del Toro. Sorry,
I was gonna say that's the Hideo Kojima game.
Wrong fat filmmaker.
Yeah.
George R.R. Martin.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry, I get my fat filmmakers with glasses mixed up. Let us move on from this political nonsense about League of Legends being blocked in Syria and move on to our third and final segment for the night, which is our remakes, remasters, and re-releases segment.
All right.
So yeah, we've noticed, and it's always sort of been a thing where game makers have this in sort of their back pocket, where when the originality well seems to run dry, they're like, let's bring out some old IP people love and let's bring these back. But now more than ever, and maybe it's just that we're noticing it now more, and it's always sort of been prevalent, but be that as it may, it seems like the proliferation of remakes, remasters, re-releases, whatever, the idea of bringing old games into the current gen and reselling them to us, it seems like it's more in your face now than it's ever been.
And I think when we were brainstorming this segment, I kind of took this from E3. This year's E3, I felt like had a tremendous amount of announcements, at least, about remasters and stuff. I actually wrote the ones that I could kind of tell from E3 down. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 by my count. Yeah. Announced at 3, with more like right beforehand and right after. So clearly something's working here, right? As far as that they're selling or they're worth it.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to open up discussion by just asking you guys, like, are you a fan or not of remasters? Kind of ignore re-releases and ports and stuff, but like remastering old video games, yay or nay? What do you think?
Gotta give it a may.
Meh.
It's obviously a case by case basis. To paint the broad stroke of my opinion, it's you got to look at the individual game. You got to look at how much the original game meant to you. You got to look at willing you are to just play it again if you haven't played it in a while, and you got to look at what they do in the remaster or remake. Whether it be just a straight up port with slightly improved graphics, or whether it completely redoes the entire game from the ground up. And there's pros and cons to both, but it's not enough. I don't think I can say it broadly like I can on most of my opinions, where I can just be like, this is great or this sucks. I think it's just too case by case basis for me.
I want to say that I'm above it all and want to be like, no, I just need new original IP. I am such a sucker for all of the, like, when any kind of like re-release, remaster, whatever gets announced, I absolutely eat it up. If it, like Tim's point, it's a case by case basis, and more often than not, the cases they seem to make an argument for remastering or bringing into the current gen are games that I absolutely love, and I'm like one of the first people to be like, I need that on the Switch, or I need to get that new remaster on PS4. So as much as I'd like to believe that I'm above it all, I'm clearly in the demographic they're aiming for.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Berto. Like, I wish I wasn't as susceptible to it, because the idea of remasters, to me, a lot of times I'm like, why are they remastering that game? Like, what's the point of a remake of that game? But I fall for them most of the times. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. Like, I bought the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker remake for Wii U, and it's basically like they put Bloom on it. Like, it doesn't really look better. It plays slightly better because they took out some of the boring sailing elements. But it was, especially that was for the Wii U. I think that was the biggest issue with it. Like, if it was for the Switch, it'd be cooler. But Nintendo in particular seems to be like completely diving in and just remaking everything. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad.
You know what they're not remaking?
What's that?
The Virtual Console.
I mean, yeah, well, the virtual
the one
virtual
thing
console,
that everyone is asking for. The
You know
one
what's-
thing that I would give them $10 a month to just do the Virtual Console and give me all those fucking games on my Switch. I want to play Mario RPG on my Switch. I am telling them I will give you $10 a month, and you know what? They're not going to do it.
they're not about that. What's funny about that is, like, the virtual console, when I think about it, like, really like kind of sucked.
It
Like,
did
it costs so much money for those games.
so much money on that.
Which is, but that's, I think, the biggest argument I have for remakes and remasters is that if you are getting it to an audience that can't get it, I'm all for it. I think the price points on that is generally the issue, which is, they remake Wind Waker and sell it for $60.
Yeah.
That's really not like an okay thing to do for, however old a game it was. But then on the other side of things, you got games like, and why don't we just jump into this? Let's talk specific games now. You got games like Resident Evil 2, which I think was a dynamite remake. I actually,
absolutely. Resident Evil 2 is like up there for one of my games of 2019.
Yeah, and for me, I never really had the opportunity to play Resident Evil 2 aside from emulation. I think it actually came out on N64 and I rented it, but I wasn't able to purchase it back in the day because I was under 17.
No.
Or whatever. So essentially, like, my only option was to get like a PlayStation disc working. Like, I guess I could have. But the fact that they remastered it, I think, brilliantly handled the controls and difficulty.
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
added like the whole mercenaries mode kind of a thing. It wasn't called mercenaries or whatever. But I think it was a genius remake overall. I think it is one of my top games of the year. I guess that was last year. Was that this year?
No, it was this year.
Was it February of this year, maybe?
Yeah.
So it's definitely up there in my running for top games this year.
January, February. I think like late Jan, early Feb.
Yeah. So what are some remakes you guys have played that you thought were either good or not worth it?
No, definitely Resident Evil 2. If you're talking about remakes that were completely like, it just completely knocked it out of the park. It took, because I mean, if you're looking at the source material that it's drawing from, let me just do a quick search right here to see when the first Resident Evil 2 came out. Resident Evil.
I'm gonna say 96.
Resident Evil 2, 98, very close.
Oh,
So 1998, and this came out, 21 years later? So you would expect that 21 years later, the graphics would make that kind of a leap, and it absolutely did. It shows, and not just graphically, but control-wise. The tank controls, as much as I think that I know people hate on tank controls, but I think in that era with those graphics, the tank controls made you feel uneasy because you were never fully in control of the movements, and because it was slow and sort of like meandering, it added to the fact that you're like, oh my god, I'm being chased by a licker. I need to like turn around and run the fuck out of here. And you're like super, you're like super slow. It adds to that
such
tension.
a good impression.
That was did you like my tank control movement?
The jogging.
it added to the tension, and I think it was part of that whole. It just everything worked together. But I think with these graphics, tank controls would not work. So the updated controls, the graphics, the game isn't a 1-for-1 remake of Resident Evil 2 because, there were some scenes where you walk in and you're like, this doesn't look exactly like Resident Evil 2. It sort of evokes Resident Evil 2, but it wasn't a 1-for-1 remake. And so I think that absolutely, they're like, we need to take this, make it better, but also let people know that we're still respecting what this game was. And I think that absolutely knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's funny because when you think about games that have been remade / remastered, there are few games that I can think of that on that degree that they put that much work into remaking it. That was basically
oddly enough, the GameCube remake of Resident Evil 1.
That was the first, the other real, best remake arguably of all time, be the Resident Evil 1 remake for GameCube. That was then subsequently remastered to make it full circle. But
yeah, they did ride that train a bit.
Yeah. Other than that, other than those are basically the only games I think that have really put the work in that I can think of that I played that really paid off in terms of how well the finished product turned out. I played, the Yakuza remakes recently, but I never played the original Yakuza games. I don't know about if you guys can think of any remasters that brought you in to a game that you'd never played before.
I think we're kind of touching on the difference between like a remake and a remaster. Right. Updating the graphics is not a remake. That's, you know what I mean? I don't think so. And I feel like Resident Evil 1 and 2 remakes, basically they took not only updated graphics, but they added to the game in a way that sort of celebrated the original games very well. And I actually kind of think, aside from ones that are coming out, I can't really think of too many full-on remakes. But so you were saying about Yakuza, you were talking specifically games where you played the remake and not the original?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic as well. It's kind of, it's stuck between topics because those games were fully rebuilt from the ground up to have the modern kind of system. Mm-hmm. Still, to my knowledge, it contains basically all, I'm sure there's some differences, but it gets the vibe, but fully modernizes it, and it's not just a graphical upgrade, it's more than that. So I think it automatically gives, as much as I'm a fan of old games and how they play and how important that is, I think if they put in the work to fully redo the engine and all that stuff, it's automatically going to give it a leg up and set it apart from just a remaster. The work that goes into it. But it is interesting that sometimes it can bring people into games that they never played the original.
Well, that oddly enough, and I don't know if you'd call them remakes or remasters, but the Game Boy Advance versions of the original Final Fantasies is what got me to play the 2D Final Fantasy games.
Really?
Yeah, I had only dabbled in Final Fantasy before then because again I just didn't really have access to a PlayStation. Although I know the original Final Fantasies did come out on NES and Super Nintendo, I think.
Well, it's Final Fantasy 3/6 we got on Super Nintendo. I don't know about. Did we get 5 on Super Nintendo?
/4. We did not get 5.
Yeah, we didn't get 5.
So some of them, and that's a whole disaster as far as
like
U.S.
that
Japanese
was
release
not,
and so on.
like, yeah.
But those got me into the original 2D Final Fantasy games. One of which was like they made it a full 3D engine. I think it was Final Fantasy 3 in Japan. For the DS was remade in 3D. Yeah. So I would call those remasters maybe. Which again was funny because I played Chrono Trigger for DS or Game Boy Advance. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it was the Game Boy Advance version because I do think that came out for a handheld also.
I can't remember if it was DS or Advance. But the Chrono Trigger remaster / remake, like that's one of my favorite games of all time. Probably my favorite JRPG of all time. And I never played the original. I know Ambrose used to tell me about it all the time in elementary school and middle school, but I never played it originally. So
if you could track it down, I would recommend getting, I don't know if like by eBay or wherever, getting a copy of the PlayStation version because it has like the Akira Toriyama cutscenes that are drawn like the
interesting,
like animated cutscenes in between. Those are really good.
Because that's what's interesting is I've heard that people say that the Game Boy Advance or the DS version plays better, and I don't know why. But apparently there's something different in like either the menus or the combos or something like that. I'm not 100% why on that. Which is funny because like the Game Boy Advance did all the remasters of the old 2D Marios and stuff. Like Nintendo's been riding this train for a while.
The Game Boy Advance had also I don't know if it was just a port. I think it was just a straight up port. I don't think they made any changes to it. As far as I can tell, of Breath of Fire 2, which is one of my favorite RPGs. Long story short, just a quick aside, like my brother and I went to a Funkoland like in the middle of fucking Brooklyn.
Funkoland, good lord.
to buy a copy of this game, and it was like we took the subway when we shouldn't not have been taking the subway by ourselves. I don't remember where we took it to. It was like Myrtle Avenue somewhere. Just to buy a copy of this game. And it was like $40 at Funkoland, and we're like, fuck. It's one of my favorite games.
Oh, that's dope. So I don't know. It's a weird thing because true remakes are kind of hard to come by. Like Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, that's a remake.
I would classify that as a remake
because some people have issues with. Apparently, the dialogue's different in it.
I've not played Twin Snakes. I kind of want to play it because I've heard that same sort of argument.
Yeah,
and I'm I don't want to say I'm like the biggest Metal Gear Solid fan, but I think Kojima's story is a little interesting, to say the least. It's got something to it. What am I talking about? Metal Gear Solid story is fucking bonkers. But I enjoy the series, so I would be interested in going back to playing that because I very much enjoyed Metal Gear Solid for PlayStation. I remember getting the demo disc for PlayStation Underground and playing that intro sequence like 30 or 40 times. So definitely one of my favorite games.
Which you can replay in Metal Gear Solid 4. I think you basically replay the intro. So I don't know. It's weird because the remake remaster thing is a little blurred. Typically remaster to me is like basically a graphical upgrade.
Actually, that's a good thing. I was actually just about to ask you what in your own words, what's the difference between a remake and a remaster? And you actually were just starting to, give that answer.
Remaster to me is polishing it up and essentially porting it to a new system. Which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. I think if you charge full price for it, it's kind of shitty. But I like that it kind of opens games up to more people. Mm-hmm. I kind of always think that's a good thing. Like maybe it's not for me if I already played the game or whatever. But the fact that it's on another system so that more people can enjoy it, that's cool. Right. remakes again, like they're a little tough because like you got something like Resident Evil 2, which is basically from the ground up.
Yeah.
But then you got something like and this actually hasn't come out yet, but like Catherine Full Body, which releases in September, is basically the original game with like an added story element / I assume more levels. It sounds like. So like, what do you call that? Is that a remake?
It's a remake plus?
Like, you know what I mean? Is that a remaster?
I would call that a remaster.
You would call that a remaster? Because apparently there's like
it's
another
a
third of the
remaster.
game being added.
Where I draw the line is the engine, I think.
Interesting.
If they're using essentially the same engine, or even if they're upgrading the engine, but you would not be able to tell as a player, then it's a remaster to me. But obviously, it's just for semantics, really.
Yeah.
If they're adding in some content, some new stuff, maybe a character here and there, that's cool and all, but that's not a remake to me. It's still the same game with just it's like an expansion.
Interesting. Because something like Final Fantasy VII, for instance, that's a remake, right? Like
Absolutely.
We're calling that a remake.
Is a total remake.
Because it looks like they're changing the combat system.
Yep.
As well as graphical overhaul and stuff like that.
I mean, when you're making the entire first release of this remake just in Midgar, and they're saying that it's going to be like a 30 to 40 hour experience, where in the original game that was maybe like 5 or 6 hours of the overall gameplay, that's a total remake to me, because that means they're adding in a whole bunch of other shit that was not in the original.
It's tough. We found ourselves in a weird pickle because I want to argue one way and the other.
Well, let us argue then.
Well, like, see, I almost think Catherine Full Body is like, if you're changing the narrative and you're adding more stuff to the narrative. Yeah, but is that a remake? I don't know. That's right.
Does that fall into remake territory?
It's adding in new content to me. You're not building the game over.
You're kind of updating, yeah.
I feel like, this is just a thought exercise, but I feel like if there's at any point when you see somebody playing the game where you're like, is this the original or is this the remake? Then it's a remaster, probably.
So I know here's a game that might throw a wrench in that a little bit, and I know we're all excited for it because we talked about it at E3. Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening what? What do we think?
It's a remake.
That's a remake?
Yeah. I would say it's a remake.
But it looks like it plays exactly the same.
It doesn't. It's the engine. That's what it.
But it's completely remade from the ground up.
It remains to be seen to me. I don't know exactly how it's gonna play.
Yeah, like if it played the same way.
Impression, but there's no mistaking it. It's not just, to me, it's not just like a graphical upgrade. But we'll see. I could be wrong about it.
I mean, they overhauled the art style too, so that's part of it, maybe.
I wanted one of those keychains so bad.
Did you see the amiibo that's coming out for it? It's pretty adorable.
Oh, I am buying the fuck out of that amiibo.
I almost pre-ordered it, but then I pre-ordered Google Stadia instead, like an idiot.
You say that, but then when you're like, and now the real fun begins, when everyone's fighting over the remaining Google Stadia.
We'll see. I get the cool blue controller. I really wanted
what's it called? You didn't get the wasabi controller, right? You got like
I wanted the wasabi.
Midnight blue.
Clearly white. I was looking at phones the other day.
Clearly white.
Same colors for phones as they do for the controllers.
Oh, is it called clearly white?
Oh, that is clearly a white dude right there.
I was looking at black though.
Oh, okay. They didn't have one called just some Spanish dude.
Like kind of Mexican.
It's like oh look, it's Birdo. I take offense to that, Google.
It's like a tanned white.
It's called the Daywalker model.
Before we get taken off iTunes for being racist,
yeah, we're totally gonna get. Oh no, wait, this isn't on YouTube yet, so we can't get ban hammered.
Oh, I'm gonna put it on YouTube. Don't worry. We'll get demonetized from the negative $2 we made. So here's another little wrench in the whole scheme of things.
All right,
it's kind of
throw that wrench in there.
It's a personal, super excited upcoming remake for me, or remaster. I don't know. The Warcraft Reforged, right? So Warcraft 3 and Frozen Throne bundled together, completely overhauled graphics. Apparently, they're changing the story in bits and pieces. But also apparently they're leaving the gameplay and the quirks of the engine as similar to the original as possible. The reason being for that is that what's that? Sorry,
remaster is what I was gonna
that's
say.
okay. So you say remaster.
remaster.
All right, that's fair. Is it? Is it?
Is it? But is it?
It's a remaster.
So that's cool and all.
But is it?
Part of the reason why they're trying to keep all the engine quirks and stuff in there is because the current multiplayer community around that game, which still exists. If you want to, I watch Grubby on Twitch all the time. I think Tim actually recommended him to me. But there's still a competitive multiplayer component to Warcraft 3, which is dope. Basically, if you change the engine, you're going to spoil that community because they're so used to playing it. And that's kind of what I'd bring up. It's interesting when you involve online games in these re-release, remaster, whatevers, because you basically are bringing a community back with resurgence of new players. What do you guys think about that?
I think it gets muddied by the fact that it's a competitive game more so than just a multiplayer game. I think, like you said, the community's still alive. I'm not sure, because Blizzard recently, like a year or two ago, they did a StarCraft remastered, and that was actually, you could play people like who weren't using the remaster. You could toggle the graphics anytime. I think it's going to be the same kind of deal with Warcraft. So these are just such storied games that, like you said, all the top players, if they changed the unit pathing or just like the engine, even like a small way, they would completely disown it. And if you lose that aspect of the game, like who is this game for?
Yeah.
And I think the multiplayer factors into why. Like, if it wasn't a multiplayer game, I don't think people would care about the pathing so much. But it really comes down to the competitive atmosphere. Like, what if they, 10 years from now, they remaster Rocket League, but like the physics are all different, Yeah,
like, that'd be
like,
yeah,
people would be like, what is this garbage? Like, it's. I think the competitive nature involved with it, like if it were a co-op game or something, I think people would be okay with it. But because it's all about using the physics and the engine to defeat your opponent, and you've spent all these years like mastering the engine, that's where people get upset.
Because that's a big thing when new versions of games come out. Even like whenever every new Smash Bros comes out, the competitive.
You got to figure out like what the new meta is and like figure out.
And it's always like, oh my god, they left out like shape shifting or whatever the hell term.
It's like, oh my god, Waluigi's still not in it for a good reason.
Which is kind of interesting because like the nature of multiplayer games nowadays is you have so many patches that essentially games can be remade on the fly a little bit. Like I just thought of this. I didn't even think about this before, but like think of I don't know if you remember, Tim, like playing through Dark Souls the first time. At one point, they patched Dark Souls, and there was a thing in the Dark Souls community where it's like, if you didn't play on pre-patch, like you didn't play the real game, because apparently it made it easier. Which whether it did or didn't, it's interesting to think about because you have these like constant online games that get patched and updated and get expansions. And is that remaking the game? Like, because certain patches come out and it ruins. Or it doesn't ruin games for people, but people will leave the game because of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I know what you're saying. Like, patches come out and it makes the game a complete 180 from what it originally was.
Yeah, or it upsets the meta so much that everyone changes things. So it's the multiplayer component throws a big wrench into stuff. Here's another wrench in our argument or discussion.
Just throw all the wrenches
same
in there.
Company, different game, same universe, different game. World of Warcraft Classic is coming out August 27, 2019.
All the World of Warcraft.
Which is that's just a strange thing. I'm actually kind of excited for it. I think it's mostly nostalgia or whatever.
Maybe I'll finally get into World of Warcraft.
I mean, it could be fun. I don't know. I've played it on private servers once for a little bit, and I like enjoyed it because it was just
we should start a Synics guild.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, but it's like reliving my childhood almost a little bit. But that's a weird thing because essentially you have Activision Blizzard who released an expansion in the past year, maybe a year and a half or something like that. and most people think it's garbage, as far as I could tell from the community and so on and so forth. And now you have the community super excited for the first version of that game that ever came out in 2007, I think, or 2006. That's
everything
now
is old.
re-releasing.
Everything old is new again.
Yeah, and now there's all this weird, like, if you watch YouTube videos and stuff, it's like the 10 things you forgot about Classic, like the 10 things you wished they fixed in Classic. And there's this big debate on quality of life changes, and if they, like, are they going to allow group matchmaking, or are you going to have to find your groups like you used to? And that's a crazy thing to me. Like, what do you guys think? Like, do you have an issue with changing old games with quality of life kind of things, or updating old games to slightly change the gameplay to make it either more modern friendly or user friendly for the current generation? How do you guys feel about that?
I think anytime you update an old game with quality of life changes, it's always a good thing. Very rarely are you going to find the one game where it's like, oh no, but that like one annoying aspect of the game kind of made it endearing. I feel like those games, they exist where they're like, oh, but that, like the ones that have a cult following, where it's like, you know, like with movies where they're so bad they're good. You have games that are like that where like, oh no, you know, it had a really fucked up control scheme, but that's part of the reason why I kind of like it. Those games are few and far in between. If you were to ask the majority of gamers out there and people, just anyone who plays video games in general, not just hardcore gamers, but anyone who's a fan of video games, and you put a hypothetical scenario to them where if you take a game that they were very fond of in their youth that they had issues with, and they're like, what if we fixed those issues and brought it into the modern age? Would you be okay with that? I would say like 9 times out of 10, you'd get a yes. Maybe every now and then you get the one person who'd be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, it was kind of fucked up, but I kind of enjoyed it that way. And that's what I feel like about most of these games. If you change the gameplay, you change the overall feel of the game with quality of life changes, majority of the time, people are going to be okay with it. It's a few people who are going to be like, no, but it was kind of endearing that it was fucked up.
I mean, with your specific example, I gotta be my 50-50, non-committal self and say it's a case-by-case basis again. But with the specific example, like having to look for groups in World of Warcraft, I think it would take away from the game if they took that out of it and just put matchmaking in. I think the matchmaking is an example for groups of a necessary quality of life on the progression of the game, where they're like, okay, this game's already 5 years old and 6 to 10 years old, whatever. We need to keep adding all this stuff to keep people playing. But when you're trying to bring it back to what it originally was, I think there's merit to having to actually look for groups manually. Trying to get together some actual people, have some actual conversations, and be like, hey, we need this, we need that. Don't just click a button that will just set us all up. And I think you can take away from games by easing quality of life. There are certain games where adding small quality of life functions will greatly enhance it, but you have to use your discretion properly. I know I was thinking, and I don't know why it popped in my head, but like Ninja Gaiden without the bug of enemies respawning is a completely different game.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if they've ever remastered it without that bug, but
well, I mean, they have the version on the Switch where even if you choose like the easy version, it still has a bunch of that shit in there.
It does. Okay. Cause like imagine if you fix that.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, I'd rather play the original.
Imagine if you fix the bug where if you make it like, what is it when you get to like level 7 and you die and it sends you back like 5 levels?
Yeah. So I think Tim's kind of right that it is a bit of a case by case basis, where if you're changing the game for the right reasons without altering the key or core experience, because I do think the original World of Warcraft was about forming communities and having that social aspect, and obviously it changed over time because basically more and more people had less and less time to play it and do that kind of shit. I I think you are right, Tim. Like, essentially, quality of life changes can be great, but they can also be severely detrimental if you do it the wrong way.
Yeah. I mean, to even push the point further, I think sometimes remasters and remakes can be like greatly misguided by changing some things. Like I know when Trials of Mana was announced and you texted me about it, the first thing I said was like, "Oh, I hope that there's still co-op in it," and it doesn't look like there's gonna be. And I hear that, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna play this game anymore.
Yeah.
That like Secret of Mana 2, part of why it was one of my favorite games was because it existed in an era where so few games competently did co-op, co-op JRPGs. And even though it's not, great the way the co-op works in that game, in amongst its peers, it was amazing. And it just blows my mind that they would make a remake of it and fully go through all this trouble to fully like realize the world all over again and bring it to the States, if you disregard the port that they just released for the first time, and then just take away that key feature. And it just seems a little misguided to me. And then another thing, I mean, to stray a little bit from my point, to talk about another remaster that we were discussing earlier was the Ni no Kuni one. And I just see missed opportunities. I said it when I was playing Ni no Kuni. I was like, this game would be so amazing if there was co-op in it. It would fix all my issues with like the fact that you have to rely on these AI teammates who are just really dumb, and it kind of scales the difficulty around that. And if you could just be like, hey, let me have my friend tag in and control this character, wouldn't that be so much fun? But missed opportunity.
Yeah.
How do people not think of these things?
It's weird because so Resident Evil 2, which I think we all can agree is like one of the best remakes recently that truly like changed everything up. Everything they took out of the game, they kind of like put something back in, where like tank controls, for instance, they removed tank controls. But they kind of they made it so your character moves pretty slow. Is a little bit clunky moving, and they put in all like the dark kind of light, like disadvantage, I would say, like to kind of counteract that, where like you can't really see as well, like
right,
which in the original
grabbier, so you can't
enemies definitely like reach for you better and stuff. Like they basically balanced the change they made to keep that sense of dread and that sense of
right. So it's like, hey, you can move better, but it doesn't really do you much because you still can't see that well.
Yeah, and like zombies essentially seem to be way more tankier because you can aim for headshots.
Yeah,
and you can aim for the legs. Where in the old games it was sort of just like a luck thing, I think, for the most part. I mean, I know you could aim up, but it seemed like it was just a chance kind of a thing. So, I think that's the core element in a remake is like, if you're gonna change something, you have to think of the kind of
sort
ripples,
of like the waterfall effect.
Yeah, that will change with it and adjust them as necessary. Any other games that you guys wanted to talk about as far as remakes, remasters?
I mean, not specifically about games, but I guess just on the topic of remakes, remasters, what is it? Re-releases, just the whole
even reboots.
Everything.
We could talk about reboots.
The reboots,
because DMC is one I could think of that had a reboot that was shaky.
What is it about just old IP? I mean, from a business standpoint, I could see why they do that, because it's costly to come up with new IP. When you have 3 to 5 year development cycles for a AAA game that costs millions of dollars for something that may be a hit, where you don't have that guarantee, I could see the appeal for taking something old that's been a hit, putting a fresh coat of paint on it, and then, selling it to the public. But as fans, what is it about playing things that we've already played any number of times in the past that just like, oh, look, this is coming out and it's got like 60 frames per second now instead of 30 frames per second. We totally need to play this. What is it about that gets us as fans like, oh, we need to get this again, even though we've played it like 5 times?
I mean, it's really just the low hanging fruit. We're all susceptible to this. Like I like to think of myself as a relatively, level headed consumer, but I see Catherine full body. I'm like, oh, excuse to play Catherine again. I
Yeah.
love the game. Like we all admitted to it. We all fall prey to this, and
We're all shills.
it's I don't want to call it a predatory tactic, but it is a bit of like a lazy tactic where they're just like, we'll just we know people like this, we know they're gonna buy it, like just do it. And
I agree with Berto in that, like, business wise it just makes sense. Like, people who love the game originally, it was a hit then, they'll probably buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone else knows the reviews and stuff about that game, so it's an opportunity for them to buy it. But I think Tim's kind of right in that it's like a lot of times for me it's an excuse to play a game again. Or so I thought. Sometimes it, like Wind Waker, I like started and was like, I don't really want to play this again.
Are you kidding me? You're still not a fan.
Dude, Wind Waker, it's a lovely game, but just the beginning of it's so bad. It's one of the worst starts to a Zelda game ever.
It's one of the best Zelda games.
It's okay. It's pretty good. I mean, it's
agree to
good.
disagree.
I think the start of the game is so miserable that it just really slowed me down. And I agree, it is a good game, but like Link's Awakening is one of my favorite games on Game Boy. I've played through that like a million times on Game Boy. So the fact that it's coming out again, it's like, oh, cool. I also think in a weird way, it's like laziness sometimes, because I'm like, oh, Catherine, like full body. Like, I'd love to play Catherine again, but I wouldn't love to hook up my PS3 and like put it in the thing again.
So how can I play Catherine but not have to dig out my PS3 and hook it up?
That's probably a terrible thing to say, but I think that's part of it for me. It's like it's added to the collection. It's it's more accessible. More people will play it probably. So it's just kind of worth it to get sometimes. As far as the updating the graphics and frames, depending on how that update goes, I think can affect it. Something like Warcraft Reforged or whatever, like I don't really care if they update the units that much. The new spike in activity I think will be cool. Mm-hmm. It is a good excuse to play the game again. But something like even Dark Souls, when it released on PC, playing Dark Souls at like 100 frames, which you needed a patch for or a mod for, was incredible. Like being able to play that at not 18 frames a second, like in Blighttown, was like pretty amazing. And I mean, part of the amazingness was it did release with the DLC included, so like essentially you could buy it for the DLC for the most part. But I do think graphical improvements can affect a game a little bit, especially transitioning to 3D sometimes if the art style's good. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I don't know why I buy them sometimes. I think sometimes it's just like dopamine because you're buying something.
That's really that. I mean, if you want to get down to it, that's what it is. My wife owns 4 copies of. She's got Elder Scrolls on PS. She's got it on the PS3, PS4, and she's got it on the Switch. She also has Final Fantasy 12 on PS3, PS4, and now on the Switch as well. And I myself have, I forget how many copies of the games that I have on multiple systems and the Switch now, because the Switch is becoming my system of like, oh, I played that back in the day. Let me get it on handheld. So I'm just as guilty of that whole argument where it's just like, it's just nice. It's like, but now it's portable.
Well, that's what's funny about like Dark Souls, for instance. Like, so the original PC release was cool, and then they put out Dark Souls Remastered on PC, and everyone's like, "Wait, what?"
What's the difference?
Like, there's no difference. Like, the textures are slightly different, and the frame rate's worse. like sometimes it's just pure greed from companies and stuff, but a lot of times I think it's just a good excuse to play a game that you really like. And it's like the handheld thing, like that makes perfect sense to me. Like, buying this game, but I can play it.
It's quickly becoming my. I played this back in the day. Now I want to play it again system.
Yeah. All right. Any other games you guys wanted to mention or anything?
Not specifically, but I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
So you get one game that you will get to remaster for the current generation. What game do you choose, and why?
Oh, you go first while we're thinking then.
Okay, so the game that I want remastered is a game from the studio doesn't exist anymore because they became SIE or whatever they're called now, but like Sony's Interactive Entertainment Studio. It's an RPG called Legend of the Dragoon.
I played it.
I want them to. I loved that RPG. It was nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing like super amazing. It didn't like reinvent the wheel in any way, but it was just a very solid RPG with a very solid story. It was like it probably got like 7.5, 8 out of 10. Nothing spectacular, but it was just really, really good, and it resonated with me so much. And I just love the game.
I enjoyed the combat system in that game with like the combos that you could
Yeah.
do. It did set it apart from most RPGs at the time.
With the what's it called, the addition system, where you like it was like a timed attack kind of thing where you get different attacks for each person. I would love to see them remake that in the style of like the Final Fantasy VII remake.
So that's what I was gonna ask, like full 3D.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I want them to do complete ground up Final Fantasy VII remake for Legend of the Dragoon.
Interesting. Tim, do you have an answer?
Sure. We got the Doom remake. That was great. I really enjoyed that. But I think it's time for a Quake remake.
Ooh.
Well, Doom that was a reboot, wasn't it?
Sure.
So are you looking for a reboot or a remake?
Remake.
Okay.
Maybe even close to a remaster, but just like it would be a different engine. Don't change too much. You don't have to do as radical changes as they did with the Doom reboot, where they completely rehaul it. As much as I loved that, I think Quake in its base form was a much more modern style of game. It was actually in a fully 3D world as opposed to Doom, which was just the whole fake 3D thing. And I would love an excuse to play through Quake again without just like I've been trying to the past several years just go through and play through all of Quake, but I can't get around to it. But I would love an excuse to fully play through the game again, and I would say I would hope that they wouldn't change too much about it, because that game in its current state is already really good, and I don't need them to add too much to the game to make me interested. But it would be a nice excuse to go back.
Well, shit. A bunch of stuff popped in my head, but I don't know why. Sonic Spinball, I thought. I have no idea why. Because
I need remaster.
You don't need
that just needs to stay where it is.
That popped in my head for some reason. I think a convincing one could actually be Demon Souls. Would be a decent remake. Kind of update it a little bit, give it some quality of life changes, similar to kind of what they did with Dark Souls a little bit. Not a tremendous amount, because I think the system was pretty good back then, but just change some of the world tendency stuff. Reinvigorating the online servers would be cool with that. And especially if they did something where it was like, okay, we also added like the 5th Archstone or something like that, which was a mystery in the first game. If they added like some content to it, I think that could be pretty cool. The game had a really weird tone. The characters were great. It had a lot of like melancholy to it. And it's kind of started the whole Souls craze thing. So that would be an interesting one. Just again, an excuse to play through it again. And like, it'd be cool if they built on that world a little bit. They kind of did with like the Souls, Bloodborne, etc. games. But I think that would make a nice little remake there. What was the third one? Oh, I thought of Animal Crossing for GameCube. Which I know they've made a million more, but like the charm and the appeal of the first Animal Crossing was so good. Plus it had like basically the NES Virtual Console in it, where you could play like 20 something games of NES just by collecting them. And if you took that and updated it with some of the newer mechanics of the new games, kind of fleshed it out, added some online components, I think that would be pretty dope too. So that's my guesses. You know what they shouldn't remake is any game for Sega Genesis, basically.
You don't want to play Vector Man?
Dude, the sound chip was like too good. That's what I was thinking about Sonic Spinball. I was like, oh, remix would be cool, those songs.
Imagine
but the sound chip was
Altered
perfect.
Beast in current gen.
But then he like he actually says like rise from your graves. Like it'd be terrible.
It's like, dudes, get up, rise from your grave.
I feel like the Genesis had like the sound chip and the visuals were so good for those games. Like, don't remake them.
Welcome to your doom. Very, very, very enunciated.
Yeah, it would be too crisp, dude. You need those like weird.
I want them to remake it with modern graphics, but with the sound chip to be just as shitty.
Like that would be, I'd be okay with that maybe.
So it's like you have super graphics, like super ultra realistic looking werewolf dudes, and you still have the
and just like those scratchy drums on the Genesis. I love that sound chip. Ooh, Summoner 2? Summoner 2? I like that RPG. That could use a graphical overhaul. I don't know. I'm just thinking of games that I kind of liked back in the day at this point.
As far as other remakes and remasters, I mean, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm excited for it. I don't think it's happening because they don't even know when it's going to be finished. It's coming out at the tail end of the current gen.
Yeah, we'll all be dead before they put out the second.
And this game has been in the making for like the past 7 years. So we're never going to see the end to this remake. But it looked cool when they showed it at E3.
I'm excited to try it, if only because I never could get through. Like, I bought Final Fantasy on like PlayStation 3 Virtual Store or whatever the hell they called it, and I was like, oh, why are they like chibi block characters? Like, I didn't realize that's what they looked like in the overworld, and for some reason it threw me off so bad. And I was like, oh no.
So did you never make it past Midgar? Because
dude, I don't even know what Midgar
now you can play up until the end of Midgar.
Like, I got to a place where there was like a little town or city that you could like rest in. It had like a house. That's all I remember.
That was in Calm. That was just after Midgar, and
nope. I feel like that's wrong.
Are you sure?
It was all metally.
Like Eris's house?
Maybe? I don't even know if I saw Eris.
Was there a bunch of garbage all around?
Maybe. The whole game looked like garbage, so it's hard to tell.
Because you're looking at it with your 2019
Viking
brain.
Rage says,
go back with your 1998 brain.
In chat, he's saying, "Don't give up. Don't lose
Flowers
hope."
in a church.
I don't get that reference.
No hope.
That's Al. What's up, Al? I'll play it, and maybe I can get some of the story.
I will say this much. I will give this much praise to Final Fantasy VII Remake. It does look fantastic. It does look like they put a lot of time, money, and effort into it. And I read in an article. What's up? They certainly put a lot of time into it.
Tremendous amount of
time. They
put
a shit ton of time into it. I think I was like just starting out at Morgan Stanley when they put time into it. That was almost a decade ago. There was an article that I forget. I think it was like the president of Square Enix or someone very, very senior within the company, where they said something to the effect of, we don't want to put something out that's total crap. Where he's like, we have a vision for this, and we don't want to put something out that isn't like leaps and bounds ahead of the original.
What'd you say, Tim?
It hasn't stopped them so far.
I was gonna say, yeah, they love putting out crap sometimes.
Well, in comparison to Final Fantasy VII, I think is what he was trying to make the quote to.
That's admirable. I have my doubts.
I have my doubts just like you.
But we'll see. No sense fretting about a game that still might never come out.
That I have yet to see in person.
Is there a release date?
There is, right?
March 3rd, 2020.
If we make it.
My birthday.
It'd be wild if they were just hoping like meteor hits. Like they're just like, oh man, I really hope the world ends.
just give them a date, any date.
They're just lobbying against global warming.
March 3rd, 2020.
Like protections. They're like, no, global warming's good. Please, anything.
The game's coming out March 3rd, 2020.
We can't keep pushing it.
Square Enix forever.
All right. We'll wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's
all right. So that is
time we wrap it up.
that is about the end of episode 28. 28?
Yep, it's
Sure.
28. I mean, that's what's on the title. That's what I'm saying it is.
Going. We're sticking with it.
We're sticking
episode
with
28, we got remastered, remakes, re-releases, reboots. Who cares? Re-stuff.
Re-stuff.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have been listening, thank you for chiming in on Twitch chat. If you chimed
Yes,
in.
and thank you to everyone in chat for joining.
Yeah. Check us out at splitscreencynics.com. We're on Instagram at splitscreencynics.com. Take out the E's. Again, misspell Synics. I always forget that part. Again, go check out youthegamers.com, UTHEGAMERS.com. We just kind of partnered up / are now affiliated with that site.
Yeah, we're affiliated.
Yeah, they got some cool stuff. I mean, it's just starting out, but they're basically esports and video games, like content hub with different creators, different articles, different videos, etc. We're hosted on there, so you can see our stuff on there too. What did I forget? I don't know. Berto, what do you got?
Outside of the usual split screen Synics channels, you could see right there on if you're watching on Twitch, we have our information there for YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me at Albie the One and Only on pretty much all social media. Garrett, where can we find you?
Thank you for reminding me. Twitch.tv/GarrettGetsInto. And last, but certainly not least, Tim, what do you got?
In lieu of my social media, because at this point everybody knows how to reach me, I'm going to read off an email I got today. It showed up in my spam folder.
Oh.
It's titled REFU and Kiss My Ass.
Oh, okay.
Ongoing conversation that I've been having with this person. Caroline is her name, allegedly.
Oh, okay.
Dear scumbag, I just want to tell you that you suck.
Oh.
I will never forgive you for what you did to me, you piece of crap. Asshole, do not you dare talk to me again. Believe me, you don't want to see my other side. Ask your goddamn sister. She has seen it. Kiss my ass. TB.
Dude, whatever you do, don't fight with her again.
Yeah, no, don't.
I will not you dare to talk to her.
Dude, what
again.
did you do to Caroline?
Jesus, yeah, seriously.
I send so much hate out into the world that like I can't even keep track of it. So
And seriously, and tell your sister knows.
It's because you said like a video game was bad. She was like,
my goddamn sister.
Goddamn, you got your if you want to know, your sister knows. Don't mess with Caroline.
Yeah, careful with Caroline. She's a firecracker.
Yeah, hopefully we can avoid her in the future. Nice spam catch, Gmail.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, yeah, so that's going to be it for us. Hopefully we're here next week if Caroline doesn't firebomb us. You should see the spam folder on the website, dude. Just so many weird comments about like, oh, great topic. Check out insert like fake website here. Like hundreds of them. But yes, thank you so much for listening or watching or participating, whatever. Last reminder, Void Bastards.
Yes.
Next episode in 2 weeks, so try to play that or look at it or review it. Watch me play it on Twitch. Watch Berto play it on Twitch. Don't watch Tim play it on Twitch because he's not doing that yet. But
I might not.
He might in the future.
He
You
might
never
not.
know.
But you know where you can check him out on Zanga.
Check him out on Zanga because he's on there.
Write a blog about it.
Al's saying we should make it a segment where it's hate mail to close this show. Well,
if we get enough, if we get to the point where we're getting enough hate mail, you know what? We may make a fourth segment called Synics Read Hate Mail.
Yeah.
Cynics
Cynical about the Synics.
Dislikes on YouTube.
Well, so there you go. Send us hate mail.
Hey, listen,
please.
if we ever get to the point where people are singling us out on YouTube and like writing personal comments to us or giving us thumbs down, I will gladly read those on air.
We got one. I was so proud of us. But yeah, keep on gaming. Peace.
Peace.